the complete evolution of Tyrannosaurus. This ancient fiend of hell has long since died out, but even in films and pictures, the image of this monster gives me goosebumps. You don't really need to introduce him. This is a Tyrannosaurus in person. Today we will follow the complete evolution of this extraordinary animal and try to satisfy the curiosity of our viewers as much as possible with the theories and facts of scientists around the world. So, let's go! This huge predator became famous thanks to the Jurassic Park film franchise and is firmly entrenched in the minds of viewers around the world. With its huge mouth and teeth the size of bananas, it became a real nightmare for ancient animals and, of course, for movie heroes. A Tyrannosaurus in a movie is like the coolest actor on stage. He comes out, takes a couple of steps, growls, and all the spectators are already squeezing into their chairs. In real life, this giant was approximately 12 meters long and weighed up to 9 tons. It's like a walking mountain of muscles and teeth. But the funny thing is that in the movies he is always chasing someone, although scientists believe that in real life he could be a scavenger. And another fun fact is his short arms. In the movies they always look kind of ridiculous, as if A.T. Rex is trying to reach the last piece of pizza, but can't. The ancestors of Tyrannosaurus were much smaller than their famous descendant, the main representative of the superfamily. They had to go through a long and difficult evolutionary path before becoming the real kings of the dinosaurs. These little dinosaurs ran through the ancient forests, looking more like domesticated chickens with a bad temper than fearsome predators. They were no bigger than a large rooster and proudly thought, someday we will become great. Evolution treated them like a strict trainer, forcing them to run, jump and fight for every piece of food. Gradually, their descendants became larger, stronger, and smarter. Over the course of millions of years, they acquired powerful jaws, long teeth and, of course, that very royal posture. These little dinosaurs have learned to use their brains and brawn to survive in a harsh world. Each step in their evolution was like a new level in a video game, more and more difficult. But they did not give up and moved forward towards their dream of becoming real giants. Found and described in England in 1910, this small carnivorous predator gets its name from the presence of a crest at the tip of its snout. For a long time, Proceratosaurus was considered a relative of Ceratosaurus only because of this crest. This poor fellow wandered through the pages of textbooks and scientific articles, mistakenly assigned to an alien group of theropods. And he probably thought, well, how can this be? I'm different, completely different. And only at the beginning of the 21st century, thanks to phylogenetic research, the scientific understanding of this dinosaur changed. It turns out that the Prehistoric was not a relative of the Ceratosaurus, but a member of the Coelurosaur group. This group included Oviraptorosaurs, Ornithologmosaurs, Maniraptorians, including birds, and even Tyrannosaurs. Imagine, Proceratosaurus was a closer relative to our modern birds than to that terrible Ceratosaurus. Given such small dimensions, the ancestors of Tyrannosaurs were true masters of caution. Small predators had to constantly look around and beware of the much larger and more terrible predators of that time, megalosaurs. The small ancestors of Tyrannosaurs ran through ancient forests, hiding behind every bush. They knew that if the Megalosaurus spotted them, the game might not end in their favor. Megalosaurus was like the older bully at school that all the younger ones tried to stay away from. But these ancestors did not give up. They were cunning and agile. It was thanks to these skills that they were able to survive and ultimately evolve into the fearsome tyrannosaurs we all know and love. Don't forget about the guanlong predator. The name of this dinosaur, guanlong, translates as crowned dragon. And as you might guess, such a majestic name is associated with its special feature, a large crest on the skull. This cone was not just an ornament, but a real crown for guanlong. This crest was like a badge of honor, something like an ancient dinosaur passport with the inscription Important Pepper. But, in addition to his crown, guanlong was also a dexterous and fast hunter. This dinosaur lived about 160 million years ago and was the ancestor of those same tyrannosaurs that everyone loves to talk about. Yes, guanlong was one of the first representatives of tyrannosauroids, and it was he who laid the foundations for future formidable predators. Guanlong was not very large, about 3 meters in length, but this did not stop him from being a true master of his craft. Thanks to his speed and sharp claws, he was a threat to small animals, who would certainly tremble in fear at the sight of his crown. This cone may have played the role of not only decoration, but also helped in mating games. Imagine how guanlong meets his beloved and begins to show her his cone, as if saying, "Look at my crown. Is it possible to resist such a handsome man?" Guanlong, which, like its relative Proceratosaurus, was first classified by paleontologists as a completely different clade of theropods. At first, scientists thought that guanlong was related to the allosauroid Monolophosaurus, but, as they say, not everything is so simple in the world of ancient dinosaurs. This dinosaur was a real hunter. But bad luck, in the same area there are both larger and, frankly, much more fearsome predators. On the one hand, we have Monolophosaurus, a 5-meter dinosaur that also loved to snack on something fresh. This big guy was twice the size of guanlong and probably loved to show who was boss. When the guanlong saw his relative, he most likely immediately switched to the run if you want to live, and ran as fast as he could. But that's not all. There was also an even more formidable rival, a Sinraptor, already 9 meters long. This giant was a real colossus, and when he appeared on the horizon, guanlong probably didn't even try to argue. He knew that it was better not to catch the eye of such a dinosaur tank. Guanlong was a master at saving his own skin, and despite being a predator himself, sometimes he had to quickly change his dinner plans and go into escape mode. Let's just say the hunter is a hunter, but he also had to be careful in this harsh world. A story about a real lizard of noble origin, Calescus aristoticus. This name speaks for itself, because the nobility of this lizard lies in its relationship with Tyrannosaurus. Calescus lived at about the same time as Proceratosaurus, 167 to 165 million years ago. But unlike his relative, our noble friend was perhaps a little larger. Scientists suggest that the length of its body could reach 5 meters. But there is one catch. It is difficult to say this with complete confidence, because all that was found were skeletal fragments of the upper jaw and limbs. A complex dinosaur puzzle with most of the pieces missing. Calescus, apparently, was that mysterious gentleman. On the one hand, it had Tyrannosaurus relatives, and on the other, its size could have impressed any passing dinosaur. If he could speak, he would probably say, "Yes, I have noble blood, and I will show it to you as soon as they find the rest of my skeleton." But be that as it may, Calescus is another exciting page in the book of ancient evolution. Even from pieces of his jaw and limbs one can imagine what a formidable and majestic creature he could be. Here's a story about the next theropod in the branch of development Yutyrannus, whose name already speaks for itself. You means feather. Tyrannus immediately hints at family ties with Tyrannosaurs, and the species name Huali is translated from Chinese as beautiful. Feathered, beautiful, and at the same time formidable dinosaur. It's as if a Tyrannosaurus Rex decided to put on a fancy jacket and go conquer the world. Yutyrannus, although it belongs to the family of Prosaurosaurids, that is, primitive tyrannosaurs, stands out for its very impressive size. An adult individual could reach a length of as much as 9 meters, and the weightest predator almost 1,500 kilograms. This is not a joke, but a real walking tank with feathers. Now imagine that all 3 found specimens of Yutyrannus were discovered together. This suggests that these beauties probably led a gregarious lifestyle. Yes, can you imagine? Several 9-meter-long feathered tyrannosaurs walk together like a group of fashionable giants, hunting in the vast expanses of early Cretaceous China 125 million years ago. To be honest, this picture makes me a little uncomfortable. Imagine how such a flock of beautiful, but terrifyingly large predators appears on the horizon, and everything around falls silent. Even the bravest dinosaurs probably thought, maybe it's better to wait out this moment somewhere in the bushes. Another monster that walked around ancient China, Cenozoic. This ancient predator got its name for a reason. Sinotyrannus translates to Chinese tyrant, and just think what a cool title that was back then. This Chinese tyrant lived on the territory of modern China, and, apparently, was the real owner of those places. Imagine, such a Sinotyrannus is walking through ancient forests, and everyone around is just thinking, well, that's it, it's better to get out of his way, otherwise you never know. This beauty came from the same family as the famous Prosaurosaurus, but, being a true Chinese tyrant, he, of course, kept his mark. Unlike his relatives, Sinotyrannus was even more impressive, and his name inspired respect even in those distant times. Sinotyrannus, like other tyrannosaurs, was at the top of the food chain, and probably feared no one. He could organize a hunt in the vastness of ancient China, and even the largest dinosaurs probably did not dare to argue with him. Let's take a look at these ancient tyrannosaurs, which we call Prosaurosaurids. To make it easier for you, we call them ancient tyrannosaurs. But this does not mean at all that the Guanlong or the Kailesk are the direct ancestors of that very formidable Tyrannosaurus Rex. Imagine, over 100 million years of evolution, how many different tyrannosaurs trampled our planet. It's like a family gathering, where everyone is similar, but each with their own character. Evolution is such a confusing matter that you can break your head trying to figure out who is related to whom. Alas, the preservation of fossils is a great rarity and a real success. Imagine how many bones have disappeared without a trace, and how many we still haven't found. Modern science is faced with only the slightest fragments of the Mesozoic fauna, as if someone is deliberately hiding this ancient secret from us. Those bones that managed to be imprinted in geological layers are literally grains of knowledge left to us by the ancients. So when we talk about Prosaurosaurids and Tyrannosaurids, it is quite possible that they had one common ancestor, and they themselves were like sisters, only from different families. They could develop in parallel, remaining close relatives, but each line chose its own path. But you know what? That doesn't change the fact that all these guys we're talking about are real Tyrannosaurs. Guanlong, Kailesk, Sinotyrannus, all of them, whatever one may say, are the heirs of that great line of predators that ruled the world millions of years ago. And although we cannot say for sure which of them was Rex's direct ancestor, they were all part of this formidable and amazing family.
Now we see the very end of the Cretaceous period. Animals thrived on the earth. Herbivores roamed majestically around the planet. Predators were preying in abundance. Among all the diversity of the animal world, the biggest and strongest lizard stood out, Tyrannosaurus. He was the king among the dinosaurs. Of course, there were predators that could easily engage in a fight with the T-Rex. Spinosaurus, for example. But that was out of the question. Spinosaurus lived in Africa. The T-Rex was in North America. Well, compared to Rex, which literally bit the heads off Triceratops, Spinosaurus had weak jaws, which could not withstand the jaws of Tyrannosaurus. No competition at all. Until a larger and more powerful dinosaur than Tyrannosaurus is found to overthrow him. T-Rex will always carry the title of king of the dinosaurs, and Spinosaurus is simply not such an animal. But while T-Rex himself was and still is one of the strongest and biggest lizards of the Cretaceous period, we'll tell you that the fight in the movie Jurassic Park 3 was fictional. Jack Horner, the guy who was behind the introduction of Spinosaurus into the Jurassic Park franchise, admits that Spinosaurus couldn't have beaten Tyrannosaurus if you wanted to find his way out. And the heavyweight Triceratops could actually inflict mortal wounds on the king. And the giant Argentinosaurus could trample a predator and not even notice it. But those were stupid herbivores. And people are looking for a decent predator. Why did Tyrannosaurus become a king? The fact is that at the very beginning of the deep study of paleontology, the Tyrannosaurus was one of the first species that scientists discovered. The first fossilized bones were discovered in Wyoming in 1900 by an expedition from the American Museum of Natural History, led by Barnum Brown. In 1905, Henry Osborn of the American Museum of Natural History described the remains from Wyoming as Dinosaurus imperiosus, and the fossils from Montana as Tyrannosaurus rex, tyrant lizard. On December 30, 1906, the New York Times published an article about the discovery of the first Tyrannosaurus, consisting of huge bones of the hind limbs and pelvis of the animal, whose partial skeleton was installed in the hall of the American Museum of Natural History. For comparison, the skeleton of a large bird was placed between his legs, to impress museum visitors even more. Scientists have unknowingly elevated T-Rex into the king of the dinosaurs, and in some cases, even the god of dinosaurs. But if we hear, see, and know so much about Tyrannosaurus, why don't we know who was the lizard king before this giant? Let's get to the bottom of this. At the end of the Cretaceous period, at the end of the dinosaur age, there were giant predators, the tyrannosaurs, at the top of the food chain. And the king was T-Rex. Before him, however, the menace of all terrestrial animals was a lesser known, but no less ruthless predator. At least one of them. Watch this video to the end. Give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and click on the bell not to miss new and interesting releases from the channel Real Unreal. Japanese scientists have described a new dinosaur species with the sonorous name Olobigsaurus uzbekistanensis. The dinosaur belonged to a genus of the family Carcharodontosauridae. This family included large carnivorous dinosaurs, which were the top predators before tyrannosaurs took their place. The fossilized remains of an ancient giant were discovered in the center of the Kizilkum Desert in Uzbekistan. The age of these sediments suggests that the new species inhabited this area about 90 million years ago. The mass of Olobigsaurus uzbekistanensis exceeded 1,000 kilograms, and its length was 5 to 8 meters, more than the length of an adult African elephant. The size of this animal far exceeds the size of other predators, the remains of which have ever been found in this desert. Based on this, the researchers conclude that Uzbekistanensis was most likely at the top of the food chain in the early Upper Cretaceous ecosystem. Before the late Cretaceous, Carcharodontosaurids, including Olobigsaurus, disappeared from the face of the paleocontinent, which then included Central Asia. This disappearance is associated with the spread of tyrannosaurids, but this transition is poorly understood due to the lack of relevant fossils. And now we are going to go even further, to the Jurassic period. Who was the king of this era? This is the Torvosaurus. It was the largest Jurassic predator in the United States and Portugal. Its body length was 10 meters or 33 feet and weighed 3 tons, making Torvosaurus the largest Jurassic carnivore after Saurophaganax. Torvosaurs coexisted with other large theropods, such as Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, in the United States and Portugal, but apparently had different ecological niches. Torvosaurus outnumbered its neighbors in size and may have been the largest predator of its ecosystem. Most interesting. This predator has been assigned to different families. Torvosaurus was attributed to the family of megalosaurs. Then it became a member of the basal carnosaur family. And then it managed to be attributed to Spinosauridae and Thetanouri. However, none of the above claims were supported by phylogenetic analysis. Another interesting fact. Very rarely have scientists found fossilized dinosaur eggs. Torvosaurus has been a godsend for scientists. Fossilized lizard eggs were found in western Portugal, in riverbank sediments thought to date back to the Tithonian stage of the Jurassic period, about 152 to 145 million years ago. The specimen is preserved in the Museum de Larignan in Portugal. Because the eggs were abandoned due to unknown circumstances, it is unknown whether Torvosaurs provided parental care for their eggs and young or abandoned them soon after laying. Let us not leave out the other Jurassic hosts. Whether these giants reached the kings of the Mesozoic like Tyrannosaurus is debatable, but their strength and agility were sufficient. Allosaurus after Tyrannosaurus, this predator is the most common in documentaries and feature films, fantasy literature and the production of toys and collectible figures. Allosaurus had a narrow body, long and strong hind limbs, rather powerful for theropods' front limbs with 3 claws. Despite its lightness, the lizard's skull could withstand heavy loads, but its biting power was greatly inferior to that of Tyrannosaurus. The largest owl could be 9 meters long, 3 meters high, and weigh 1.7 tons. Many paleontologists at this point are of the opinion that Allosaurus could hunt in packs. These ruthless lizards engaged in combat with huge stegosauruses, and there is evidence of this. Allosaurs could also attack other predators. Nor should we forget cannibalism. Bite marks on the bones of their own kind are also present. Another worthy specimen of the Jurassic period is Ceratosaurus. Ceratosaurus could reach a length of 6 to 7 m from snout to tail end, and its weight was calculated in different specimens from 670 to 980 kilograms. Theropod had a large head relative to the whole body, rather small forelimbs with 4 toes, strong but not long legs, trunk compressed from the sides, tail especially compressed, the upper part of the head, neck and trunk covered with skin ossicles. The predator had dagger-like teeth. The main feature that distinguishes Ceratosaurus from other large theropods is the presence of 3 horns on the head, or rather 1 horn located on the midline of the skull and 2 semicircular bone ridges above each of the eyes formed from the lacrimal bones. Of the whole trio, Torvosaurus claimed the role of king. But his rivals Big Al and Ceratosaurus could also claim the main place under the sun, as king of the dinosaurs.
Why did dinosaurs become dinosaurs? This release will not be quite ordinary. In it we will talk about why people began to call prehistoric creatures dinosaurs. Why dinosaurs, and not some kind of Jabberwocky? It all happened not so long ago, about 300 years ago. considering that the last dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. One British biologist named Owen was terribly interested in prehistoric creatures. After all, even then, people all over the world found the remains of unknown animals. But the most interesting thing is that these remains were once incredibly huge creatures. And so Owen decided to call these unknown creatures dinosaurs. The word dinosaur comes from the Greek dainos, which means terrible, and sauros, which means lizard. A British scientist gave this term, referring to the size and grandeur of prehistoric animals. Mr. Owen called dinosaurs pachyderms. In the 19th century, people classified large and massively bodied hippos, elephants, and rhinoceroses as pachyderms. Therefore, the word dinosaur sounds very majestic. When someone found dinosaur bones, myths and legends were immediately born that the remains of terrible giants had been found somewhere. The giant bones found were considered the remains of giant people, which are described even in the Bible. Someone claimed that the bones remained from the time of the Trojan War. These remains may have belonged to Greek and Trojan heroes, and perhaps even the gods of Olympus. In the East, the bones found were considered to be the bones of dragons and attributed healing properties to them. And so one French scientist in 1818 determined that these bones belonged to giant lizards. In 1821, two completely new genera of unknown sea creatures were officially discovered. The first genus was called Ichthyosaurus, or fish lizard. The second genus was given the name Plesiosaurus, which means close to lizards. A year later, two more new genera were discovered. These are Mosasaurus, or Mosa river lizard, and Megalosaurus, which means huge lizard. 2 years later, new remains of an unknown creature were found in southern England. And after research, the fossil received a name Iguanodon. The name translates as iguana tooth, due to the similarity of the teeth of the found prehistoric reptile and the modern one. In the summer of 1832, during blasting operations at one of the industrial sites in Great Britain, bones dating back to the early Cretaceous period were discovered. This discovery was reported at a meeting of the Geological Society, and these remains were given the name Hylaeosaurus, which means forest lizard. Hylaeosaurus is a representative of the armored ankylosaurus. In 1842, scientists created a special suborder, calling it Dinosauria, which means terrible lizards. At the time, it was believed that dinosaurs were huge, slow-moving reptiles that walked on four legs. And therefore, in the vicinity of London, sculptures of antediluvian reptiles were installed, as they were represented in the 19th century. Let's leave the UK and move to the American continent. The first dinosaur remains found in North America consisted of individual teeth. 3 different types of dinosaurs. The first species was Trachodon, or rough tooth, which belonged to hadrosaurs. The second species was Trudon, or wounding tooth, which was a small theropod. The third species was Dienodon, or terrible tooth, which represented the Tyrannosaurs. It was at that time that these discoveries changed the opinion of scientists that all dinosaurs were four-legged. The time of great paleontological discoveries has begun. It was truly the great dinosaur race. In a very short time, several species of herbivorous dinosaurs from the genus Diplodocus were discovered. These are Camarasaurus, Apatosaurus, and Brontosaurus. Several species of prehistoric predators and herbivores were also discovered. Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, Stegosaurus, Monoclonus, and Triceratops. One after another, species of duck-billed dinosaurs appeared. These are Corythosaurus, Lambeosaurus, Saurolophus, Parasaurolophus, and many others. From the Ceratopsian genus, such species as Centrosaurus, Styracosaurus, and Pachyrhinosaurus were discovered. The species of predators of that time stood out especially clearly: Tyrannosaurids. These are Albertosaurus, Gorgosaurus, Daspletosaurus, and of course the Tyrannosaurus itself. In 1859, a British biologist made an astonishing discovery that changed our understanding of evolution. The scientist suggested that birds are descendants of dinosaurs. He studied the skeletons of Compsognathus, a small theropod dinosaur, and Archaeopteryx, an ancient bird. Both of these fossils were found in the same place. Comparing these skeletons, the biologist discovered striking similarities. Archaeopteryx had feathers and wings, but in many other ways its skeleton was very similar to that of Compsognathus. However, not all scientists agreed with their colleague. Some have argued that Archaeopteryx was the first bird not related to dinosaur evolution. Over the next century, the most popular theory remained that birds evolved not from dinosaurs, but from earlier reptiles such as crocodilomorphs and thecodonts. Direct evidence of the presence of feathers in dinosaurs appeared only in the mid-90s of the 20th century. In one Chinese province, numerous remains of small carnivorous dinosaurs with amazing feather imprints were discovered. These findings became a sensation in the world of paleontology, confirming the theory that many dinosaurs, including the ancestors of modern birds, were covered with feathers. These feathered dinosaurs helped scientists better understand the evolution of birds and confirmed the connection between ancient reptiles and modern feathered inhabitants of our planetity. Sinosauropteryx, Caudipteryx, and even Microraptor with full-fledged bird feathers convinced the scientific community of the plumage of theropods, members of a large group of coelurosaurs, including the famous Tyrannosaurs. The presence of hair in Tyrannosaurids was confirmed in 2012 after the discovery of Uranus. Today, scientists have firmly established that 8 families of carnivorous dinosaurs from the theropod suborder had feathers. In addition, some ornithischian dinosaurs, such as Psittacosaurus, Tyannulong, and Calindrodromeus, may have had feathers. These discoveries greatly expanded our understanding of the appearance and evolution of dinosaurs, revealing that feathers were much more common among these ancient animals than previously thought. The discovery of dinosaurs such as Velociraptor, Oviraptor, and Protoceratops changed our understanding of giant dinosaurs, demonstrating that carnivorous dinosaurs could have been quite small. During Soviet-Mongolian expeditions in the 40s of the 20th century, Tarbosaurus, a relative of the famous T-Rex, and an unusual Therizinosaurus were found. In 1965, the giant Deinonychira was discovered. Long-necked sauropods such as Mamenchosaurus and Omysaurus, as well as large predators such as Yangwinosaurus, Sinraptor, and Gigantoraptor, have been found in China. In addition, many small feathered dinosaurs were discovered. The latest discoveries take us to South America, to Argentina. In 1985, Argentine paleontologists reported the discovery of 2 new predatory dinosaurs, Carnotaurus and Abelisaurus, belonging to a new family of theropods. In 1993, the remains of the largest titanosaur, Argentinosaurus, were found. And in 1995, the remains of one of the largest predators in the world, Giganotosaurus. These discoveries continue to expand our understanding of Earth's ancient inhabitants and their diversity. In the first half of the 20th century, the scientific community mistakenly believed that dinosaurs were slow and bulky creatures. However, starting in the 1970s, research began to show that dinosaurs were active animals with high metabolic rates. Moreover, they developed various features for social interaction, which greatly changed humanity's views on their behavior and ecology. Do not forget from which animals the first dinosaurs appeared. Of course, from archosaurs. Here are some species that are worth paying attention to. Proterosuchidae, Erythrosuchidae, and Euparkeria, found in geological strata dating back about 250 million years ago, and Middle Triassic archosaurs such as Cenozoic, of which crocodiles are also descendants. Other archosaurs that are also close to early dinosaurs include Lagerpeton, Marasuchus, and Silesaurus. The first dinosaurs that we know of were small bipedal predators up to 7 feet long. The earliest of these include Saurischian dinosaurs such as Nyasasaurus, Saturnalia, Herosaurus, Storchosaurus, Eoraptor, and Alwalkeria. These dinosaurs laid the foundation for the evolution of many future species. Early theropods, such as members of the group Coelophysoidea, including Coelophysis and Tawahali, lived in the late Triassic and early Jurassic. These predators showed that dinosaurs could be quite active and fast. The largest early predators included ceratosaurs, followed by basal titanosaurids, including megalosaurids and spinosaurs. Fossils of these dinosaurs date from the mid-Jurassic to the end of the early Cretaceous, about 180 to 94 million years ago. Research suggests that these groups of dinosaurs diverged from the evolutionary line leading to the feathered coelurosaurs, which further led to the emergence of diverse and specialized predators. Among the early Ornithischian dinosaurs, Picenosaurus and Lesothosaurus were discovered. The Heterodontosaurus studied around the same time was about 3 feet long, had relatively long forelimbs, and had long fangs in its upper and lower jaws. Agilosaurus was also discovered from the Jurassic period in China. Ornithischian dinosaurs are divided into 3 main groups: Thyreophora, ornithopods, and marginocephalans. Thyreophora, such as ankylosaurs and stegosaurs, had powerful armor that protected them from predators. Ornithopods, including hypsilophodonts and hadrosaurs, were unarmored, but compensated for this by being fast and able to form groups. Marginocephals include pachycephalosaurids and ceratopsians, which stood out for their bizarre bony growths and horns, which were used for protection and in mating rituals. Thyreophora were distinguished by the presence of shells consisting of individual scuts or plates, which was their most striking feature. The earliest known Thyreophora was Scutellosaurus, which lived about 196 million years ago. Although its shell was similar to that of later Thyreophora such as stegosaurs and ankylosaurs, it otherwise resembled Lesothosaurus. Scutellosaurus had a long tail and could move on both 2 and 4 legs, which distinguished it from subsequent Thyreophora. Eoraptor, one of the most famous early dinosaurs, represented an important stage in evolution. Although Thyreophora and early dinosaurs such as Eoraptor were very different in appearance, they had in common that they were at the origin of the enormous diversity of dinosaurs that existed during the Mesozoic era. Herbivorous dinosaurs such as giant sauropods and armored ankylosaurs and stegosaurs typically had small brains. Even later herbivorous dinosaurs such as Edmontosaurus, although having slightly larger brains, were still inferior in this regard to carnivorous dinosaurs. Predatory theropods tended to have relatively large brains and well-developed vision, which were necessary for successfully hunting fast prey. For example, T-Rex had a particularly large brain compared to other carnivorous dinosaurs. At the top of the evolutionary chain of intelligence were theropods, most closely related to modern birds. Small dromaeosaurids such as Velociraptor and trudentids such as Truden had brains comparable in size to those of modern birds. They also had large eyes, indicating advanced binocular vision, which allowed them to see in three-dimensional space, as well as keen hearing, making them one of the most intelligent and efficient hunters of their time. The study of dinosaur intelligence is often based on modern ideas about the intelligence of birds. Birds are traditionally considered less intelligent than mammals, and measuring their intelligence poses significant challenges. Many behavioral traits that may appear to be intelligence are often the result of instinct or imitation. Anatomically, birds had relatively large brains compared to the size of their heads. Most species had well-developed vision and hearing, while the sense of touch and smell were developed only in some groups. Birds are capable of complex forms of communication using visual signals, sounds, and songs. These traits may also be shared by their dinosaur ancestors, indicating their potential for complex behavior and communication.
A group of paleontologists discovered a huge number of remains of prehistoric lizards in Alaska. Almost at the North Pole, dinosaurs that lived 70 million years ago in incredibly cold temperatures. To find out what species lived near the Arctic Circle and how they managed to survive, it was decided to equip a research team of specialists and send it to the very north of Alaska. Preliminary studies have shown that a huge number of remains were found in one large sandstone mountain, and excavations should be carried out on this mountain. The giant rock has many layers. To get to the first remains, you need to carefully dig up layer by layer. And at the same time, you need to act very carefully so as not to damage valuable finds. What did Alaska look like in the Cretaceous? Scientists believe that at that time there was a low temperature as it is now. Could be a few degrees warmer. But anyway, it was cold enough for dinosaurs, and experts still cannot understand how the ancient dinosaurs survived in such weather. Dinosaurs beyond the Arctic Circle? This is something fantastic. The extreme life of prehistoric lizards has been carefully studied by paleobiologists for several years. Findings will greatly help speed up this process. The discoveries will show what the dinosaurs that lived in such a climate were capable of. And we will understand how they survived in such a cold temperature. During the Cretaceous period, many dinosaur skeletons ended up in the river, which died near the shore. Paleontologists have discovered a real Klondike of bones and remains of ancient lizards. After careful analysis and full study, these bones can tell many interesting stories about the life of dinosaurs. After all the necessary work, the first results appeared. Scientists have determined that large Alaskan dinosaurs hatched eggs for 6 months. 180 days the cubs were in the eggs. They did not have much time to get stronger before winter. After hatching, the tiny dinosaurs had about a month to prepare for the harsh frost. But even then, the babies were not ready to migrate to warmer territories. Watch this episode until the end. Give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And also click on the bell so as not to miss new and interesting videos from our channel. And it's true that dinosaurs lived in Alaska all year round. But how then did herbivores survive in the harsh winter? In winter, there was no grass, no leaves, no branches. With the help of coprolites, scientists have found out what ancient herbivores ate in cold weather. The food was very simple. Rotten remains of trees. Dinosaurs ate this very inedible food in winter. This is very amazing. Many insects lived in old, rotten logs. Beetles and woodlice contained the protein necessary for the animal's body. Protein increased the immunity and health of any herbivorous dinosaur. Hadrosaurids could feed on rotten trees for 4 months of the year, in the coldest period. Another very important question: how could dinosaurs protect themselves from frost? The temperature could reach -35 degrees. 125 million years ago, there was a cold climate on the territory of modern China. As cold as the climate of prehistoric Alaska. But dinosaurs lived there at that time. Tyrannosaurus. Relatively small predator. Only 9 meters long. The Tyrannosaurus was dressed for the weather. It was covered in feathers that looked like hair. But they were real feathers. Thanks to such clothes, dinosaurs survived in the cold. Most likely, the lizards that lived in Alaska had exactly the same feathers. But not only feathers saved the ancient inhabitants of Alaska. For example, cestosaurids had a very interesting defense against the cold. These little dinosaurs were the size of a dog. What kind of tiny creatures survived the winter? Cestosaurids are primarily raptors. Raptors had a sickle-shaped claw on their feet. They lived in Alaska and were also covered in feathers. But due to their small size, it was impossible to defend themselves with feathers alone. Small predators found salvation. These are burrows. Small animals at the onset of frost could dig holes. And there is even a theory that, fleeing the winter cold, cestosaurids could hibernate for 3 or 4 months before the warm season. Analyses studied by scientists were able to confirm that 13 new species of dinosaurs could live in Alaska in harsh climatic conditions. The scientists also found an entire elevated area that was littered with Cretaceous dinosaur footprints. Paleontologists needed to understand what dinosaurs looked like, and for this, the traces were ideally suited for analysis. Once upon a time there were plains on the site of these steep mountains. But the ground gradually shifted. As a result, vertical rocks appeared. This is the largest collection of footprints in Alaska. These incredible prints can tell a lot. What behavior did dinosaurs have? What did the ancient lizards do? Several types of Cretaceous fossils lived in Alaska. These are large hadrosaurids. Also cerapsids. The only representative of the cerapsids that lived in Alaska was the Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurs in Alaska formed large flocks that could consist of several thousand individuals. Scientists also found traces of large tyrannosaurids. Where there are herbivores, there will always be predators. Dinosaurus, northern brother of T-Rex. It was half the size of its southern relative. But in bloodthirstiness he did not concede anything. Paleontologists appreciate such discoveries. So they study the lost world and an unusual ecosystem. Although more recently, scientists believed that dinosaurs could not have survived in an Arctic environment. Now those guesses are wrong. Typical representatives of the dinosaur faunus of the polar regions were hadrosaurids, ceratopsians, various carnivorous dinosaurs, ankylosaurs, and hypsilophodontids. Stegosaurs are also found in the Yakut deposits, and in Alaska, paleontologists found a separate species of pachycephalosaurs and called them Alaskacephals. In regions with a relatively warm paleoclimate, such as Teat or southeast Queensland, paleontologists have also found fossils of sauropods, giant, long-necked dinosaurs. The most unusual polar dinosaur is the 7-meter Antarctic Cryolophosaurus, Cryolophosaurus elioti, a predator with a crest on its head. This crest was located across the skull, and not along, as in other carnivorous dinosaurs such as Dilophosaurus and Monolophosaurus. Some researchers suggest that the crest helped recognize individuals of its own species, but this is unlikely. So far, no similar predatory dinosaurs have been found in Antarctica. Other scientists believe that Cryolophosaurus used the comb to attract a mate. This predator, most likely, hunted rather large herbivorous sauropodomorphs, but did not disdain small prey either. This is evidenced by its petrified stomach contents, which included the tooth of Tritylodontid, a relative of mammals. Also, apparently, Cryolophosaurus practiced cannibalism. Another feature of Cryolophosaurus is the combination of both primitive and advanced features in the structure of the skeleton, which still causes difficulties in its classification. In the polar and subpolar regions, of course, not only non-avian dinosaurs lived. Paleontologists find here both birds and pterosaurs, as well as various mammals and their primitive relatives, non-mammal synapsids. In some regions, scientists have met crocodiles, turtles, and amphibians, but they are not in high-latitude locations. With one exception, in the Cenomanian deposits of Alaska, at a paleolatitude of 65 to 75 degrees, turtle fossils were discovered in the 80s of the last century. Dinosaurs were born and lived even in the coldest territories of our Earth. But even more interesting discoveries and clues lie ahead.
Today we are going to visit several time periods in our planet. Let's travel through different eras, where the main masters of the Earth, not just dinosaurs, but the most filthy dinosaurs. For dinosaurs, teeth and claws were the most important tools of survival. Without teeth, it would have been impossible for ancient lizards to survive. So how did the creatures that were among the first to inhabit our Earth get their teeth? The first vertebrates had no teeth, and they, like the lamprey of today, made with horny growths on their tongues. Today it is believed that teeth evolved over 400 million years ago from the tubercles of covering plates on the jaws of primitive fish. It is likely that at first the teeth were not rooted and sort of peeled off outward and were displaced from the inside by younger teeth. However, in bony fish and terrestrial vertebrates, the teeth are in the recesses of the jaw, and in order for them to fall out, it is necessary to dissolve their bases. A similar thing happens in humans when milk teeth are replaced by permanent ones, the ancestors of the jawbreakers. Scientists have named them Rhodotini. The fishes can be considered the first founders of the toothy smile. This species existed a long time ago. Of course, they could not be called full-fledged teeth. Most likely, it was only the embryo of full-fledged teeth, but as they say, it was a beginning and the result will come in time. Time passed by. Time and air passed each other. Several mass extinctions passed into eternity, and then came the Mesozoic Era, the age of dinosaurs and mammals. This is where an abundance of different creatures could compete with each other in the number and size of their jaws. Teeth are small as a needle and big as modern kitchen knives. Here we will stop and talk a bit about the owners of the largest, small and most unusual teeth. The teeth and dinosaurs were very diverse. Size and shape of the teeth depended on the lifestyle of the lizards and their preferences. The sharp and straight teeth of meat-eating dinosaurs work like spears. The predator would set its prey in the tooth and then either tear it to pieces or swallow, and right away. The teeth anchored in the jaw are adapted for active fighting, so they are characteristic of dinosaurs who prefer to hunt large prey. Teeth with an erased upper surface or sharpened indicate a vegetarian preference. Dinosaurs' teeth with a scooping element were used for snipping leaves. Our old acquaintance, Tyrannosaurus. Have you ever wondered why a Tyrannosaurus look intimidating? The answer is obvious. Its massive sharp teeth are frightening and terrifying by the size, shape, curvature, wear and other details of the teeth. You can determine what and how the lizard feed, as well as how it interacted with other animals and plants within its ecosystem. Tyrannosaurs were huge carnivorous lizards. They needed large amounts of meat for sustenance, so they hunted large dinosaurs. Tyrannosaurus fangs were disc-shaped and had special reinforcing ridges. The Tyrannosaurus fangs were bent inside the jaw to make it easier to grasp the prey. Tyrannosaurus fangs are considered the largest of all land predators, including the root. They may have been as long as 30 centimeters. Terrestrial carnivorous Spinosaurus possessed enormous teeth on the front part of the jaw of a 15 meters long. Dinosaurs weighing 7 tons. There were 7 or 8 pairs of sharp conical teeth. Behind the front fangs were another 20 or 30 smaller teeth. Spinosaurus teeth could be up to 15 centimeters long. Spinosaurus feed on fish, so their fangs were smooth and allowed you to string the fish on them as a spear. When a fish was caught, the Spinosaurus would immediately swallow it. Despite its small size, Dromaeosaurus's teeth allowed it to tear flesh from its victims, which was much larger than a 2-meter-long Dromaeosaurus. The predator's fangs resembled a saw. During the hunt, the Dromaeosaurus plunged its teeth into the flesh of its prey and then turned its head sharply sideways, ripping out a piece of flesh. A dagger-like serrated fangs are characteristic of both active predators and scavengers. Because of its impressive teeth, the carnivorous Carcharodontosaurus, as large as Tyrannosaurus, was named Shark-Teeth Lizard. Unlike the fangs of Tyrannosaurus, the fangs of Carcharodontosaurus were not reinforced and resembled huge razors. The jaws of the predator were weaker than those of Tyrannosaurus, which was compensated by the length of the fangs and their specific shape. The teeth of this lizard resembled those of a white shark, long, convex on the sides with sharp edges. The jaws of Allosaurus contained approximately 64 teeth, which gradually decreased in size as they approached the pharynx. If you compare the skull of an Allosaurus with that of a Tyrannosaurus, the Allosaurus teeth are proportionately smaller. Allosaurus could open their jaws very wide and possibly use the short teeth in their jaws like saw teeth and take out chunks of flesh using a cutting motion with the entire head. The teeth of the Diplodocus and Spinosaurus, on the other hand, resembled a palisade or a rake. They were not suitable for chewing food. The rake teeth were used by the lizard to rip and tear off foliage. Food was digested in the gastrointestinal tract. Its teeth were similar to those of a chisel or spoon. Sauropods did not chew their food, tearing it off with chisel-like teeth and swallowing it immediately. Food was crushed in the stomach with the help of gastrolytic stones. How did this happen? Simply the lizard would swallow smooth stones, and the food would be grinded to mush between the stones. But for example, there were up to 800 teeth in the mouth of the Triceratops. In the jaw claws, the teeth clamped together, cutting and grinding the food into pieces. Triceratops plucked plant food with its beak. Triceratops' pruning shears were constantly renewed. Their teeth grew from 36 to 40 rows in each part of the jaw. The Diplodocus had approximately 40 small, peg-like teeth arranged together at the front of the jaw. These long and thin teeth were replaced at the rate of one tooth every 35 days. The apex of the tooth formed a rounded triangle, which helped to separate the foliage from the longer sections of branches in one single action. Diplodocus ate constantly, stopping food and take only for a night's rest. This is why its teeth wore out and fell out very quickly, but in place of the old teeth, new ones grew instantly. Let's move on to sea lizards. Ichthyosaurs had sharp conical teeth. Each of them was located and separate well, like, for example, in modern sperm whales. It is assumed that, during the course of life, new teeth repeatedly fell out, replacing them. Plesiosaurus teeth are distinctive and recognizable, not rounded, but triangular in cross-section with cutting edges. This structure allowed them to wound their prey or enemy, very effectively increasing the blood flow to the victim. The wounded animal was quickly weakened by the great loss of blood. Laernulaers. Laernulaers had rounded teeth. The powerful jaw of the lizard acted as a so-called press. The prey was under incredible pressure, and the end was inevitable. Some pterosaurs were toothless, such as Quetzalcoatlus, Pterodons, and Agarkids. Other dinosaur species had teeth. Early pterosaurs often had teeth that differed in structure from other pterosaur species. For example, some had teeth on the palate. In later groups of pterosaurs, the front teeth were often longer, forming a prey grab. At the transversely expanded tips of the jaws, but the size and position varied greatly from species to species. The teeth were located, each in their own well, and when the teeth changed, they grew from behind rather than from below. Ichthyodactyls had curved teeth for eating meat, but Titanochasmatids used jaws with numerous needle-like teeth as a filter to separate captured underwater life from water. Pterodastrians had more than 1,000 bristly teeth, and the teeth of the younger Reptilidae were covered with bone tissue to make crushing food easier. Thank you all for watching this issue to the end. Give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and also hit the bell not to miss new and interesting releases from the channel Real Unreal.